Lewis Hamilton has won the 104th race in his career and the first one after Jeddah in 2021. However, now that Mercedes are on the rise with the most points scored in the past couple of races, even with Russell's DNF, it's worth noting that this is the last season of the 7-time world champion in the team. With this decision being made before he even tested the car, let alone be aware of all the upgrades that are possible in terms of turning their luck around, could Hamilton regret his move to Ferrari, seeing where the Maranello team ended their mid-season development war at? It's safe to say that Mercedes is the hottest team right now, winning the last 2 races and scoring a podium in Canada, which was all a bit too dreamy once the season started. What is very important to note here is that unlike Aston Martin, Mercedes didn't regress when the season started. They just didn't have big enough gains to fight the top dogs. But after Montreal, it seems like something clicked, as said by Allison. How could we be so stupid to not see what is in front of our noses the entire time? And now all of a sudden you have both of the drivers winning a race each, and they're back in the Constructors' Championship fight for P2 at least. Considering the fact that Red Bull is a one-man show and Mercedes have consistently scored more points than the Austrian team from Montreal onwards, it's not even a debate that this is also a targeted goal for the Brackley-based team, who would have scored at least 12 more points had it not been for the Russell DNF in Silverstone due to mechanical issues. Nevertheless, the point is that Mercedes is on the rise. They are definitely threatening to be the second and at times the fastest team on the grid, but Hamilton's tenure with the Silver Arrows is of course ending at the end of this campaign. So the question is whether or not he's made a mistake by signing the contract too early. One couldn't really blame Hamilton, as he was pretty fed up with driving a car that brought no results whatsoever, constantly changing concepts and promising upgrades and performance, but never really delivering it on the track. This is something that definitely frustrates the hell out of a driver, especially if you're Hamilton and you are a 7-time world champion chasing the 8th record-breaking championship after the controversial Abu Dhabi 2021 finale. So in cases like this, you think about what's good for you in your career, and at that point a move to Ferrari was more than logical. Not that it doesn't make any sense right now, but it does seem like the Maranello team has taken a massive step backwards, because they've raced in Silverstone with a specification that was introduced in Imola. To put things into perspective, Sainz and Leclerc had a 3-month-old specification on their car, while everybody else brought upgrades that effectively put them up in the pecking order. This is definitely not the scenario that Hamilton wants to see in his future team, and if you're to think about it, Leclerc got lapped 3 times after Monaco, the race that he won, which is a bizarre fact for a driver who was supposed to fight in the Drivers' Championship in a fierce manner. Another very important thing to add is that the technical director of Ferrari, Enrico Cardile, has left the team with immediate effect and departed for Aston Martin, even if it was his fault that the car behaves the way it does, giving a certain amount of hope and then dropping the ball massively when it's time to reveal the cards on the table. It's never a good thing when you have a technical reshuffle in the middle of the season, especially not when Vasseur, the team principal, is the one taking the role for the time being. Obviously a lot is going on in Ferrari right now, and the team isn't satisfied with the technical department back in Maranello, which is why maybe Hamilton by himself won't be enough to change the fortunes without any expert help that he could bring from teams like Mercedes, McLaren or even Red Bull. But nevertheless, the move has been made, and it's up to Hamilton to see for himself whether or not it's going to be a career regretting one. Of course, a driver of his caliber does have the potential to change the narrative and the entire landscape of a team, and from 2026 onwards the regulations are changing, so you could have an honest guess as to which team could dominate, and you would have equal chances to be in the right as any other human being who guessed otherwise. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the new cars, but Ferrari have already gone through a couple of regulation changes since their last championship win in 2007 by Raikkonen, and while they got close on a couple of occasions like in 2010, 2012 and 2018, they never really had the executing force to go through with it. And when it comes to 2025, it's certainly bad news that Ferrari has reverted to the Imola spec car for Silverstone right now, because it takes away a massive chunk of their budget cap to develop upgrades that they had a lot of hope would work but turned out to be downgrades, and likely putting them in the same trap as Aston Martin. The Silverstone based squad has already already turned their focus to 2025, and while this isn't a scenario for Ferrari, which will continue to develop the car in the upcoming period, it's certainly something that needs to be taken into consideration given the fact that they've spent so much money on the new upgrades and received almost nothing in return. In times where mid-season development is crucial, Ferrari is dropping the ball, and teams like McLaren and Mercedes are desperately waiting to capitalise on it. The only reason they aren't closer in the Constructors' Championship is due to Norris and Russell's DNFs in Austria and Silverstone respectively, which would have put a lot of pressure on the Maranello team. Be that as it may, Sainz has openly talked about the downgrades that the team has brought in the last couple of races and how the team was forced to go back to a car that is 3 months old and is basically written off the winning chance as soon as it got its tyres stepped on the asphalt. As the Spaniard said, "It is clearly not good enough. We have basically the same car as in Imola, and since Imola everyone has upgraded, probably adding 2/10 to the car, and we have had to revert. We have lost 2 or 3 months of performance gain in the wind tunnel, or performance we could have added in these 3 months. So clearly we haven't taken the right calls recently." What's even worse news is that Ferrari doesn't expect to improve in the next couple of races, with Sainz admitting that the car will behave badly in Hungary, where it will likely bounce in turns 4 and 11, but until a better upgrade package comes to him and his teammates' car, there is nothing more they can do about it. This is why Hamilton needs to question himself as to whether or not he should be poaching more engineers and high-profile staff from Ferrari, as it seems like the entire hope is now put on Loic Serra, the man who left first from the Brackley-based squad to Ferrari. Obviously, we all thought he might know something that we don't, and in the beginning of the season it was kind of justified that Hamilton made the move he did, but what we forgot is that Mercedes is still working with one of the greatest technical minds in the history of the sport, James Allison, who is now putting the car exactly where it needs to be, at the top step of the podium. Furthermore, Mercedes will bring incremental upgrades in the next couple of races, with steps that are not catchable for the other teams, which is something that has been said by Allison himself. If this scenario comes to reality, then we will very likely see multiple wins by the Silver Arrows, and definitely a platform on which the 2025 championship will be in their hands, as right now it's kind of hard and impossible to put Russell and Hamilton in the mix to dethrone Verstappen, considering how far behind they are at P7 and P8 in the Drivers' Championship. But with the upgraded car that would be even further levelled up in Hungary and Spa, the next 2 races before the summer break, Mercedes have a genuine chance of putting a lot of pressure on the teams ahead of them, which will then again question Hamilton as to whether or not he's made the right decision to join Ferrari, especially in a time like this. When talking about the upgrades that are planned for the W15, Allison went on to say, "Our challenge is just to keep those upgrades arriving at a pace that others cannot keep up with. In doing that, we are just bullying our car to the front by virtue of the effort made by everybody here in the factory over the coming weeks and months." With all this in mind, do you think that Hamilton's move to Ferrari might be a bad one in hindsight? And more importantly, do you think that he has what it takes to turn the fortunes around in the Maranello-based team? Let us know what you think down in the comments below. And once you've done that, have a look at the video that's on your screen right now.